What's most helpful is to focus on, I have been in touch with Nafisa. We've exchanged texts. We're talking next week. So I think, obviously, a lot of reporting, a lot of inaccuracy about what I said or what I didn't say.
It was supposed to be a coronation. It turned into an interrogation. Picture the scene. You have a league that has been bleeding money for 27 years. A business that has never, not once, turned a profit. And then, a miracle drops out of the sky. A golden ticket. A player who sells out arenas in minutes. Who brings millions of eyeballs. Who prints money just by tying her shoes. You would think the people running the league would roll out the red carpet. You would think they would protect this asset with their lives. You would think they would say thank you. Instead, they rolled out the barbed wire. They tried to break her. They tried to haze her. They tried to physically intimidate her. And the people in charge, the commissioner, they sat back and watched it happen with a smile on their faces. But here is the twist. Here is the thing they didn't count on. The big brothers were watching. The greatest players in the history of the sport, the NBA legends who built the modern game, saw exactly what was happening. And they didn't stay silent. They saw the jealousy. They saw the pettiness. And they decided to step in and say what none of the WNBA executives had the guts to say. Today, we are looking at the war between the WNBA establishment and the NBA royalty. We are looking at how LeBron James, Charles Barkley, and the icons of the game exposed the ugly truth about how the WNBA treated Caitlin Clark. Are you ready to hear the truth? Let's go. To understand why the NBA legends got so angry, you first have to understand the magnitude of the fumble. You have to understand the level of incompetence we are dealing with. For nearly 3 decades, the WNBA has been subsidized. That is a nice way of saying the NBA pays their bills. The men's league has written check after check to keep the lights on. The marketing was always the problem. The visibility was always the problem. And then, Caitlin Clark happened. She wasn't just a player, she was an economy. She was averaging numbers in college that beat NBA viewership. She was a cultural tsunami. When she declared for the draft, the WNBA finally had its Michael Jordan. They finally had their Tiger Woods. But almost immediately, the narrative shifted. Before she played a single minute, the knives came out. We heard the whispers from the old guard, the legends of the women's game. They said she wasn't ready. They said reality is coming. They said she was just a product of hype. It wasn't just skepticism. It was resentment. You could feel it in the air. Why does she get the charter flights? Why does she get the Nike deal? Why does she get the attention when we have been grinding for years? Instead of riding the wave, the league decided to build a dam. The schedule was brutal. The officiating was loose. The physical targeting was obvious. The league leadership, led by Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, had a choice. They could embrace the new era, or they could protect the ego of the old era. They chose the ego. And that is when the phone calls started happening. That is when the men who actually know what it takes to build a billion-dollar league started looking at their TVs and shaking their heads. Because they know something the WNBA players didn't seem to grasp. You don't kill the golden goose, you feed it. And the first person to speak up, the first person to grab the microphone and drop a bomb on the entire league, he isn't known for being polite. He is known for being loud. Let's start with the man who has never met a controversy he didn't like. He is a Hall of Famer, an MVP, the most popular analyst in sports television, a man who built his entire career on being brutally, painfully honest. I am talking about Charles Barkley. It was May. The season was just starting. The Caitlin Clark hate train was moving at full speed. The media was tearing her down. The other players were taking shots at her in interviews. And Sir Charles had seen enough. He didn't go on Twitter. He didn't write a blog post. He looked directly into the camera on national television during the NBA playoffs, the biggest stage in the world, and he unleashed hell. He didn't use academic language. He didn't use PR speak. He used one word that cut through the noise like a knife: petty. He called them petty women. Let's look at exactly what he said. He said, "You women out there, y'all are petty, man. Y'all should be thanking that girl for getting y'all private charters. All the money and visibility she's bringing to the WNBA." Boom. He didn't sugarcoat it. He identified the villain immediately. He called out the ingratitude. He pointed out the obvious fact that the WNBA players were biting the hand that was finally feeding them. He said, Instead of being petty and jealous, you should be saying, "Thank you, Caitlyn." And what happened next? The backlash was instant. The WNBA Twitter mob came for him. They called him ignorant. They called him a misogynist. They said he didn't watch the games. But Charles Barkley didn't back down. He doubled down. He knew he was right. He knew that in the business of sports, you need a superstar to lift everyone up. He saw Magic Johnson save the NBA. He saw Michael Jordan explode the NBA. He knew that Caitlin Clark was that person for the WNBA. And he saw the veterans trying to dim her light because they were insecure. If you think Barkley was harsh, wait until you hear who stepped in next. Item 2, the enforcer's warning. Barkley was talking about the jealousy, but the next NBA legend was talking about something much more dangerous. He was talking about the violence. We all saw the hard fouls. We saw the hip checks. We saw the cheap shots that had nothing to do with basketball. The WNBA referees were swallowing their whistles. They were letting the veterans welcome the rookie with bruises and blood. Enter Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes was not a superstar. He was an enforcer. He was the guy you called when you needed someone to get tough. He knows dirty plays because he made a career out of them. And when he watched what was happening to Caitlin Clark, he didn't see tough defense. He saw bullying. He went on his podcast and issued a warning to the Indiana Fever. He called out Caitlin's teammates. He said, "Where are the teammates? If I'm a teammate and someone hits my star player, there is going to be a problem." He exposed the soft underbelly of the Fever's early season culture. He pointed out that in the NBA, if you hit Steph Curry, Draymond Green is going to put you in the third row. If you hit Michael Jordan, Charles Oakley is going to end your season. But in the WNBA, Caitlin was getting hammered and nobody was doing anything. Matt Barnes validated what every fan was feeling. We were screaming at our TVs. Why is nobody protecting her? Barnes told us we weren't crazy. He told us that this wasn't normal basketball aggression. This was targeted. And the fact that the league was allowing it, that was the scandal. But these were just the opening shots. The narrative was still Caitlin has to prove herself. The haters were still loud. And then, the king arrived. He entered the league at 18 years old. He had the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had grown men trying to destroy him. LeBron James. When LeBron James speaks, the basketball world stops spinning. And for weeks, people were waiting. What does LeBron think? Does he think she's overrated? Does he think she's just a shooter? And then, he dropped the podcast episode that changed everything. He didn't just defend her, he dismantled the entire hater argument piece by piece. He started by addressing the haters. He said, "If you don't rock with Caitlin Clark, you're just a hater. Stay out of the kitchen." But then he went deeper. He got psychological. He said, "I'm rooting for Caitlin because I've been in that seat. I've walked that road." He talked about the jealousy. He talked about how veterans look at a young rookie coming in with the shoe deals and the fame, and they feel threatened. He validated the envy narrative that the media was trying to deny. He said, "Don't get it twisted. Don't get it messed up. Caitlin Clark is the reason good things are happening for the WNBA." Think about the power of that statement. The greatest active player in the world, the face of the NBA, looked at the WNBA and said, "You are wrong. She is the real deal. And you look foolish for trying to deny it." LeBron James gave Caitlin Clark his stamp of approval. He gave her the shield of his legacy. And for a moment, it felt like the tide was turning. It felt like the WNBA might finally wake up and realize they were sabotaging their own future. But I have bad news. They didn't listen. Because what happened next wasn't just mean words on a podcast. It wasn't just petty comments. The war moved from the microphone to the hardwood. And the commissioner of the league, the one person paid millions of dollars to protect the integrity of the game, decided to do the unthinkable. She decided to vanish. We are about to enter the darkest chapter of the season. The moment where jealousy turned into physical danger. The moment where the NBA legends stopped being polite and started getting furious. And we are about to see exactly why Cathy Engelbert is the real villain of this story. If you thought Charles Barkley was angry, you haven't seen anything yet. If part 1 was about the Cold War, the podcast comments, the shady tweets, the side eye in the tunnel, then part 2 begins with the moment the war turned hot. We have to go back to June 1st, the Indiana Fever versus the Chicago Sky, to understand why the NBA legends absolutely lost their minds over this game. You have to understand the code of professional basketball. There is an unwritten rule that has existed since the days of Bill Russell. You play hard between the whistles. You elbow, you box out, you talk trash. But when the whistle blows, when the play is dead, the violence stops. If you hit a player during a dead ball, you aren't playing basketball. You are assaulting them. On June 1st, that code was broken in high definition. The scene is burned into the memory of every sports fan. The ball was waiting to be inbound, the clock was stopped. Caitlin Clark was standing near the baseline, looking up court, waiting for the play to reset. She wasn't dribbling. She wasn't talking trash. She was simply existing. Enter Chennedy Carter. You watch the replay, and you see the intent. You see the acceleration. She didn't trip. She didn't get tangled up. She lined Caitlin Clark up like a linebacker seeking a quarterback. She dropped her shoulder, gathered her momentum, and slammed into the blind side of the rookie, sending her crashing to the hardwood. And then she shouted at her while she was on the ground. Now, pause the tape. In the NBA, if Patrick Beverley does that to Luka Doncic during a dead ball, what happens? He is ejected immediately. He is suspended for 3 games, and more importantly, the Mavericks bench clears and a brawl starts because you protect your star. But in the WNBA, on this specific Saturday, the referee blew the whistle. He looked at the violence, and he called a common foul. A common foul. The same penalty you get for accidentally reaching in for a steal. This was the moment the mask slipped. This was the moment the world realized that the welcome to the league narrative had morphed into something much darker. It wasn't about competition anymore. It was about punishment. It was a bounty system. And the reaction from the NBA fraternity was instantaneous and explosive. Draymond Green is not a man who shies away from violence. He has been suspended for stomping on players. He has punched teammates. He is the ultimate villain of the NBA. But when Draymond Green saw that clip, even he was disgusted. He went to social media and dropped a statement that chilled the blood of every Fever fan. He didn't talk about the foul, he talked about the response. Indiana better go get an enforcer, Green wrote. 1 shot is all it takes. Analyze that sentence. 1 shot. Draymond knows that if you let a player get cheap shotted once and you don't respond, you are telling the rest of the league that it is open season. You are putting a kick me sign on your superstar's back. He was calling out the Fever for being soft. He was calling out the league for being complicit. But Draymond was just the beginning. Stephen A. Smith, the man with the biggest microphone in sports media, went on First Take the next Monday. He didn't just report the news, he declared war on the WNBA culture. He looked into the camera, veins popping in his neck, and screamed the quiet part out loud. This is not about basketball. This is about jealousy. This is about envy. This is about a group of women who are angry that the spotlight is on someone else. He dismantled the defense that it's just physical play. He compared it to the treatment of Michael Jordan. Did the Detroit Pistons beat up Jordan? Yes, but they did it during the play. They didn't tackle him after the whistle. Stephen A. Smith pointed out the financial insanity of it all. He screamed, "She is the reason you are flying private. She is the reason you are on TV. And you are treating her like she is the enemy?" The NBA legends were looking at the WNBA players like they were crazy. Imagine working for a company that is going bankrupt, and then a new employee shows up who triples the company's revenue. And instead of thanking her, you try to break her legs in the parking lot. That is what the WNBA looked like to the world. And the silence from the league office? It was deafening. It took them 24 hours to upgrade the foul to a flagrant one. 24 hours to decide that tackling a player for no reason was unnecessary. They hoped it would blow over. They hoped the fans would forget. But they didn't count on the rivalry escalating. They didn't count on the Reese effect. If Chennedy Carter was the muscle, the narrative needed a face, and the media found one in Angel Reese. Now, this is where the story gets complicated, and where the NBA legends had to step in again to clarify the reality. Angel Reese is a phenomenal rebounder. She is a double-double machine. But the media tried to manufacture a debate that didn't exist. They tried to create a Magic versus Injasters, Bird dynamic where both sides were equal. But the NBA legends saw through it. Charles Barkley saw the racial undertones being weaponized against Caitlin. He saw how the media was using Angel Reese's quotes to paint Caitlin as the villain of the culture. while painting Reese as the victim who wasn't getting enough credit. Barkley, again, refused to play the game. He pointed out that the attention Caitlyn was getting wasn't because of race, it was because of range. It was because she was shooting from the logo. But on the court, the physical targeting continued. Later in the season, Angel Reese herself was called for a flagrant foul on Caitlin Clark, a hard hit to the head on a drive to the basket. Now, was it malicious? Maybe, maybe not. But because the league had failed to punish Chennedy Carter properly, every hard foul became a conspiracy. Every hit looked like a hit job. The atmosphere around the league became toxic. Fans were fighting in the stands. Comment sections were filled with racism and hate speech. The rivalry wasn't fun anymore. It was dangerous. The WNBA had a crisis on its hands. They had a product that was selling, but a culture that was rotting. And in moments of crisis, you look to leadership. You look to the commissioner. And this brings us to the most shocking moment of the entire year. The moment where the NBA legends stopped being angry at the players and started demanding the resignation of the boss. We are walking into the corporate boardroom. We are looking at the person who is paid millions of dollars to protect the integrity of the league. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. The date is September 9th. The playoffs are approaching. The tension between the new fans, Caitlyn stans, and the old guard is at a breaking point. There are reports of players receiving death threats. There are reports of racial slurs being hurled at players. It is a powder keg. Cathy Engelbert goes on CNBC's Power Lunch. This is not a gotcha interview. This is a friendly business chat. The interviewers want to talk about the financial success of the league. But then, they ask her the necessary question. The moral question. They ask her about the dark side of the engagement. They ask her specifically about the racism and the toxicity that has infected the Clark-Reese rivalry. This is the easiest test a CEO can face. There is only one answer. You look at the camera, you stop smiling, and you say, "There is no place for hate in our league. We condemn racism in all forms. We want fans to be passionate, but we will not tolerate abuse." If she says that, the story ends. She looks like a leader, but she didn't say that. Instead, Cathy Engelbert kept smiling. She decided to pivot to a business lesson. She said, "The one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch." She referenced the 80s. She said, "It's a little bit like that Bird and Magic moment." She said, "It's good for business. Let that satisfy in for a second. Let it really hit you." She was asked about racism. She was asked about her players being harassed. She was asked about hate speech. And her response was, "It's good for business." She essentially admitted that she was willing to let her players be abused, willing to let the toxicity fester, willing to let the culture burn, as long as the ratings were up. As long as the checks were clearing, it was the most tone-deaf, incompetent, and morally bankrupt statement in the history of the WNBA, and the reaction from the NBA world was nuclear. DeMarcus Cousins, the former NBA All-Star known for keeping it real, watched that clip and couldn't believe his eyes. He went on a podcast and destroyed her. "She fumbled the bag," Cousins said. "You have the golden goose, and you are treating it like a regular chicken." But it wasn't just Cousins. The NBA media titans, the guys who understand how David Stern built the NBA brand, were appalled. They realized that Engelbert didn't understand her own product. She thought the drama was the product. She didn't realize that the basketball was the product, and the drama was the poison that could kill it. But the most damning reaction came from the WNBA players themselves. Usually, unions and commissioners try to play nice in public, but this was a betrayal. Terry Jackson, the head of the WNBA Players Association, released a scathing statement. She basically said, "How dare you?" She wrote, "This is not about rivalries. This is about racism. And your refusal to condemn it is a failure of leadership." Think about the position Caitlin Clark was in. She is 22 years old. She is being headhunted on the court by players like Chennedy Carter. She is being minimized by legends like Cheryl Swoops. And now, her own boss, the commissioner, is going on TV and saying that the hate she is receiving is good for business. It was a setup. The league was profiting off her pain. LeBron James had warned us. He said, "Don't get it twisted." He told us to watch how the system treats greatness. And the system failed Caitlin Clark. It tried to chew her up and spit her out. But here is the twist. Here is the part of the story that makes it a sports movie and not a tragedy. They forgot who they were dealing with. They forgot that you can't politicize a bucket, you can't spin a three-pointer, you can't gaslight a scoreboard. So, how does this war end? The NBA legends shouted. The commissioner stumbled. The jealous veterans took their cheap shots. The referees swallowed their whistles. If Caitlin Clark was a normal rookie, she would have folded. She would have hit the rookie wall. She would have crumbled under the pressure. But Caitlin Clark is not normal. While the media was arguing, she was working. Let's look at the receipts. Let's look at the payback that Charles Barkley and LeBron James knew was coming. The haters said she turned the ball over too much. She finished the season breaking the all-time WNBA single-season assist record. Not the rookie record, the all-time record. She passed the ball better than anyone in the history of the league. The haters said she couldn't score against grown women. She broke the rookie scoring record. She had games with 30 points, 12 assists, and 5 rebounds. The haters said she was just a stats patter who couldn't win. She took the Indiana Fever, a team that started the season 1-8, a team that had been the doormat of the league for a decade, and she dragged them into the playoffs. She turned Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell into all-stars. And the petty women that Charles Barkley called out, the ones who voted on the awards, this is the ultimate moment of satisfaction. When the season ended, the voters had to fill out their ballots for the All-WNBA First Team. The First Team is the holy grail. It means you are one of the top 5 players on the planet. The veterans didn't want to vote for her. You know they didn't. It probably physically hurt them to check the box next to her name, but they had no choice. If they left her off, they would look insane. The numbers were too dominant. Caitlin Clark was named First Team All-WNBA. She sat at the table with Aja Wilson and Breanna Stewart. She wasn't just a good rookie, she was the face of the league. And let's talk about the money. The business that Cathy Engelbert loves so much. The Indiana Fever set the all-time attendance record. The WNBA Finals ratings were the highest in 20 years. Merchandise sales were up 500%. The NBA legends were right. LeBron was right. She is the real deal. Barkley was right. She saved the league. Matt Barnes was right. The jealousy was real, but it couldn't stop her. As we close the book on the most controversial season in sports history, we are left with one final image. The image of the old guard, the haters, the commissioners, the critics standing on the shore, watching the ship sail away without them. They tried to sink the ship. They tried to poke holes in the hull, but the engine was too strong. Caitlin Clark didn't just survive the WNBA, she conquered it. And she did it while the people running the league were actively betting against her. So, the next time you hear a WNBA legend talk about the culture or paying your dues, remember the 2024 season. Remember the silence of the commissioner. Remember the hip check from Chennedy Carter. And remember that the big brothers from the NBA had to step in and tell the world the truth. The torch wasn't passed. It was snatched. And there is no getting it back. What do you think? Should Cathy Engelbert be fired for her comments? And who was the biggest villain of the season? Chennedy Carter, Cheryl Swoops, or the commissioner? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one.